Hello and welcome to American Talkers, brought to you by the Cargo Bay. Talk and Chop, American Talkers. Here we are. I'm Brady C. here with my co-host as always.
Adam B. Vroom, vroom, BC.
Beep, beep, baby. Digging the shades.
Thank you. Do choppers, I mean, they've got to have horns, right? But they never,
I feel like
they didn't have, like, a spider horn. That was something we're missing
what
from
is
the
what would
spider.
what would the spider horn sound like in the spider bike? Is it like a Spider-Man sort of
It
thing?
could just be, you know, the Spider-Man song.
I would actually.
I almost said inhonal torns. And tonal
Ooh.
horns, you know.
Well, I prefer the latter. Yeah, no, I think it would be cool if they did the '90s animated Spider-Man theme song as the horn on that sucker. You know.
I'm sorry, VC. I'm just noticing something as I look at this picture of the spider bike you have on this document here.
Yeah.
Now, this is number one. I just want to say I know nothing about motorcycles, but that there's like what I assume is some sort of heat exhaust from the engine. There's a red pipe that goes to a black cone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that black cone because it's a big plot point that they're going to turn it black after getting it back chrome, and it doesn't stand out enough. But also, in the episode, that is pointed straight up in the air. And I remember thinking, that kind of looks like heat would come out of that hole. You probably wouldn't want it aimed right up at you. But now it's pointed forward, I see. So this is not the original as seen on this episode Spider Bike. Unless they changed it before the convention. I don't know.
I feel like this is the official photography, so they were just getting the good angles. Also, I think general disclaimer for anyone who's here: what we're doing is we're talking about American Chopper, one of the greatest reality television shows ever produced in the history of mankind. And as a further disclaimer, we know absolutely nothing about motorcycles, motorcycle culture, really. Apart from having watched this program, I worked in a food truck at Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue for a few years, which was one of the most hellish landscapes of humanity that I've ever been around. But in general, well, not really motorcycle experts per se.
Yeah, as we explained in kind of our preview episode, whatever that was, we have both been on one motorcycle ride each, and both on the same motorcycle with the same person, not at the same time.
We have both individually had a ride on the same motorcycle with the same person at separate times, which is I think a good insight into where we're coming from as we approach Talk and Chop, American Choppers.
Well, BC, should I advance the slide? I don't know what you got for us here.
I mean, let's just get into it because we're talking the first bike here. Yeah. We're talking the iconic, the Black Widow, designed by Paul Tuttle Jr. Mother effers. Just a classic piece of design. I would imagine one day will be featured probably in the Museum of Modern Art, potentially. For its ingenuity in metalwork and fabrication, and here it is in all of its glory. Let me just take it back to this. What are your memories of this bike from the Wayback Machine in 2002?
Yeah, I mean, this was never my aesthetic. Ever, like I liked watching American Chopper, and I thought that I like the way that chrome webbing is elevated off of the tank. Like that's kind of the whole this bike, which is the first two episodes, is the peak of Paul Jr.'s design career.
It's all downhill in terms of design, from what I can tell.
Really, what it is he made some cool metal webs and installed them in an interesting way. But I never had pictures of motorcycles or cars. I like spaceships. I like sci-fi concept art.
Right.
terrestrial machinery of any kind, I can appreciate a cool car or a cool motorcycle, perhaps a nice
Sure.
cafe racer. But yeah, I always thought this thing was ugly. And I still kind of do.
I
I
get
don't think I get what it is, but yeah, it's not for
right.
me.
I'll say I was a little. I do remember being sort of taken by this now,
Oh,
but also 2002, Spider Fever was sweeping the
yeah.
nation because Tobey Maguire was swinging around New York City as Spider-Man himself, and I was obsessed with that movie when it came out. So I feel like my feelings were kind of colored by being predisposed to liking Spider-Man. So a spider bike, I was like, well, that's kind of neat. It's a Spider-Man bike, but not really. I think they do a Spider-Man bike later. Spoiler alert. I could be wrong about that.
I'm sure
But
they do.
but
They've got to.
they do everything, which we're going to get into all of the corporate tie-ins and all the really just awful bikes down the line. But going back and watching this, the tank stands out. It's a nice piece of metalwork. Everything else about it, I generally hate as a function of design. And it's funny you mention the webbing on the tank because Paul Jr. he does the initial fabrication, but they make a point of it in the first episode where he hands it off to the guy who does the finishing welds on it. So like
Oh,
he does the
nice.
tack welds, he puts it into place, and like, yeah, then we brought in the craftsman to make sure the welds look good
Yeah.
before we send it to the chromer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that makes a lot more sense because it does look like these bikes are known to be not fun to ride. Read some articles about how awful these were as machines.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
seems like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the webbing seems like nice, fine detail work. So
It does.
it makes
Yeah.
sense that it's one of the many things. I guess they outsourced it in house. But I would
That
like.
one, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would like this bike better if it didn't have any of these little pictures or the Black Widow plate.
Yeah.
Like the Pepsi machine aesthetic is what I
Do
call stuff
do
like this.
away with the airbrush T-shirt that you get at the county fair
Uh-huh.
aesthetic of the Black Widow on it. Yeah, get rid of that. The other thing I do want to point out, and I think is going to be a recurring thing, is how much of this work was actually done by other people.
Yeah.
Like they outsource, and I assume this is all part of it. But my memory of it was like these guys are geniuses, and they did it. When I watched it, I'm like, I mean, he designs it, sure. I don't really know what his dad does other than runs the shop.
Yeah.
But he's not really hands-on at all with this particular motorcycle.
Well, he is a couple times, and both times it's a plot point that
I don't
know how manufactured it is because it's two times where they're like, you screwed this up, and he's like, no, I didn't.
You screwed up this bar. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done that. But the chrome is outsourced. The powder coating is outsourced. The hubcaps, the spider, those are CNC'd by someone who has a floppy disk. Like it shows Paul with just like a rudimentary hand drawing, giving it to someone. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna go draft that in a computer program so I can make it look good for you. Like it's incredible how much of this should be credited to a large group of individuals as opposed to just Paul Jr.
Well,
that's my take. That's my takeaway.
I would think that's the kind of thing Senior would be doing is arranging all of this, and he does talk about when stuff is happening. But there's also a point where some guy who's totally a background guy, never a character on the show, is showing Mikey the kind of menial tasks he'll be doing. And he's like, oh, and here's the record of all the people we talked to and when we talk to them, and make sure you keep a record. And his eyes get big, kind of like it's like, or you'll get yelled at, and so, like it never happened. But I mean, essentially, what they're doing more than building motorcycles, it's like they're customizing a computer, like that they're building. Where it's like, here's all these stock parts. We're gonna kind of stick them together. We're gonna fabricate a few touches, and then we're gonna push it out
to be sure. He fabricates the webbing, but like they just have a bunch of frames and gas tanks and all like
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff sitting around. So there is some customization that goes into it.
Yeah, but the
which
same
is
format
kind of
of
cool.
bike is all just a kit,
Oh, it's
basically.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
they took
No,
the
they're all they have so many of these kits, and it's like I feel like they get longer and longer as we go through time. Where I'm just like, how far over do you have to bend to ride a motorcycle? But yeah, I just left being not nearly as impressed, I guess, as I was when I was younger, and it made me a little sad about that fact.
you know, I I almost am more impressed just in that in the way of like here's a shop full of talented people and you got this guy
Hmm.
Paul Jr. who because he's the boss's son kind of gets to doodle a bike like you would in 6th grade and like make
Yeah.
a career out of that. I mean, clearly he knows how to do some stuff. I'm not trying to
Yes.
take all credit away, but it's just
Well, I think they say at this point, because we pick up, in media res, they've been making stuff for a while. But I think he says he's been designing bikes for 3 years or something at this
yeah.
point when the show starts. So relatively fresh in his
Yeah.
motorcycle design career. And the entire point of this bike is about the Javits Center show,
Yeah,
baby.
they got to take it to the
So like
Javits Center.
we got to go to the Javits Center. And it's that's the like thrust of what this is. Like this is the bike we're gonna feature at the big trade show or whatever the hell they're doing at the Javits Center. A big motorcycle show. But it's all about like this is the bike, and I feel like there is a lot of manufactured
Oh
drama
yeah.
in the actual show about like there's a time crunch. Like there's a moment where they're talking about the airlift thing. They're like,
Uh-huh.
was this bike up or was it down? He's like, no, it was down. He's like, no, it was up. And there's some like head scratching. All they do is turn a screw like a quarter of a turn. They're like, all right, that fixed it. And there's this cutaway to Paul Senior being like, yeah, there was a bit of a moment there, but we got around it pretty quickly. I'm like, yeah, you screwed a screw a quarter turn. And like, how boring was that day where they're like, let's make a thing out of that. Let's make a thing out of
It's
that.
2
Let's build the tension.
episodes of
Yeah,
that. I mean, that's what
it's do or die.
that's what I'm most impressed with is like this standard definition handycam footage and just
Yeah.
like the early days of I mean, I think reality TV is kind of a cancer. Like it's not a good thing for anybody
Yeah.
involved, I don't
No,
think
no, no,
most of
generally
the
not. No, I
time,
don't think so.
like
Most of the time, yeah, yeah.
95% of the time, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
this is one of those instances where it tore
What do you
this
mean? Did
family
something happen?
apart and
Did something
like
happen to the Tuttles?
and they don't, I guess a lot of people still have careers because they were on this show. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my point is it's still fascinating and it still feels like people creating an art form that we're early enough in the era where it's like, wow, this crew is really working and these editors are really working to
Yeah.
make this thing and it works.
Oh.
Nobody would ever watch this show for more than 10 minutes now.
No.
It's just
The
way too
editing,
slow.
it works really well. Like for what it is, like it is. I mean, you can see the footprints of what this sort of style of show is in like HGTV home renovation shows now. Like it's all sort of in here, like it's in the DNA of this show, which I think is really interesting. Sure, like I guess the final point I want to make is I felt sad that I lost some love for this, but I did come away with a newfound respect for like the totality of work that went into it from large groups of people who
Yeah.
actually made this thing, and not just like the Paul Jr. as the center of this thing, and him and his dad is like, oh, the way that they bring in a bunch of people to actually make it work is like that's a lot cooler than it being like it's the Paul Jr. show, which is he was presented as sort of the star of this
Yeah.
thing.
And it's a fascinating little economy. I mean, I don't understand how anyone can run a small business. That's
No.
insane to me. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's just so expensive and
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, obviously this was a different time, but
Yeah.
still, it's like, oh wow, this is weird. This guy has a powder coating business that employs like 10 people, like in
Yeah.
New York in the New York State. Like, what a weird thing. How'd you wind up doing that? And
show me that guy show, you know? Show me the powder coating guy
more
show.
Time with those people.
And maybe we will in the future as we traverse through the catalog of American Chopper. If you do want to hit the next slide, we can get a little bit of the insight into the genius that is Paul Jr.'s mind when it comes to thinking about the design of this bike. This is a quote pulled directly from the episode. He said, I'm fascinated by webs just because, you know, they look cool. You know, spiders from when you were a kid, you know, throwing bugs and spider webs and stuff. It's a sort of design statement that really conjures images of you know, beautifully designed bike. I thought when I heard him speak about his inspiration for the spider bike was throwing bugs and spider webs and stuff.
Tell you what, though, what is compelling to me, regardless if I like the product or not, is watching. So I would just as much watch someone with this artist statement versus a real artist sit around and kind of make micro adjustments to where things are and stuff. I love that. I love watching someone be like, no, I don't think that looks good. Do you think this looks better? Like, I could watch any human beings do that for a long period of time. It's very fun to me to think, oh, this person is thinking creatively, even if I disagree with them, like, or don't respect them as an artist. Really, I'm still curious to see what your aesthetic choice is here.
I am sort of taking the piss at him because, taking out the context, he does sound like an idiot to me whenever he says this. You're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Throwing bugs and spider web.
In the episode, you do see him like seeing things, but he's not a verbal guy, right? Like he's not a loquacious person. That's not his gift. But you do see him looking at it and going, this would look better if we did this. Like, or this is how we can adjust what this is and how it would be better. And it's funny because part of the tension is that, like, his dad is like, you're changing things. It's going to make it take longer, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, there is that is kind of the relationship between, like, the artist and the business person of, like, I'm trying to achieve a creative aim. And then the other person's like, yeah, there's a deadline and money, and these are the things that are involved in that. Like, you start to see the glimpse of what that is because he wants to make little changes, and you see his dad like pushing back. He's like, yeah, but it's going to make it look better, you know? So you do see, he sees things, like that's a very clear thing, you know, and he's got an eye towards design. But it is funny hearing him like try to speak to that particular sense of design. It's more in like an action thing, which is in its own way impressive too, I think.
And I mean, the guy I can't imagine how many people sat around drawing motorcycles because they watched this guy, or how many people found a doorway into artistic expression through having a similar aesthetic to this dude in this show. And I just wish there was more, you know, I wish more people could make money doing art. I would so quickly watch a reality TV show where it's just a random group of people and they get like an art project to do. You know, like that would be great.
That would be fantastic. I mean, it's Goose. Stop. Sorry, the cat's causing a ruckus back here. He's a real Mikey. This cat, you know what I'm saying?
We'll get to Mikey.
We will. Yeah, I mean, I think. It's interesting because in terms of the artistic and the creative process, I never really saw it through that lens until more recently, right? Because you and I, we've both taken on artistic and creative endeavors in our life, and there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of like taking into account different, like what different people need from their different jobs, and there might be some like tension in those needs and how you work around that to achieve like your end result or your end goal. In this case, it is the Black Widow motorcycle, but in other cases, it's you know a movie or a play or a art project of some kind. That which is very much my personality. I'm very interested in that thing. It's interesting seeing how this probably did have some kind of impact on me in my thinking, because I was like obsessed with this show for a window of time where, thinking about creative decisions and artistic decisions, I wasn't really thinking about on that level, but I do think it had to have taken effect somehow. And when we talked about, like on our pre-show, we talked about this was a show that like we watched, like our moms watched weirdly with us. Yeah. Like we have memories of like our mom watching this show with us. My mom's an artist, and so it was like, I was thinking, it was like, what is her intrigue in this? But it's like, there's metalwork, it's almost like sculpture, that is part of it. Like my mom's welded stuff before, so like she was seeing that in a way that I wasn't able to whenever I was probably, whenever I was first watching this, but has definitely started to resonate with me more now as I'm older and have had more, creative collaborative experiences. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting new lens to see American Chopper through at this point.
Yeah, that's 90% of the TV I watched with my mom. I feel like was because she was also an art teacher, and it was always a creative process kind of thing. Creating spaces was probably the biggest, longest lived reality fixation. Whatever the show is where they make clothes for models, like runway clothes, they do fashion lines.
Project Runway,
maybe, I don't know. I can't remember. But watch a lot of that. But yeah, I like watching the creative process, and as a kid I wanted to see more of that, less of the manufactured or not manufactured perhaps drama.
Well,
I'm sure there's both.
If you want to move into some manufactured drama, you can hit the next slide, and we can if you want to read the Paul Senior quote here.
So far this week, I've smashed my front fender in. I drove my motorhome into Christian's car, and now I gotta go to the dentist. It's not a good week. And
it's not a good week.
They cut to Paul Jr. saying, "It's really nice to have him out of the shop for a while." Like it's him and the guys working.
It's funny. He brings up, we don't get to see him smashing his motorhome into Christian's car, whatever that was. We do see him and Paulie run into each other as they fucking gun it in reverse out of the shop one day and have a car crash. And then they just laugh their asses off about it. And they're like, it was the most fun I've had in a while. I'm like,
it's the first time they're having fun together. Car. And the only time in these two episodes where they're like, have a bonding moment.
I pulled the exact quote. This is, neither of us had laughed that hard in months. That kind of thing just takes the edge off. Ripping your fender off of your car. Just takes the edge off, man. Whatever it takes for you, but it is a funny moment. I had forgotten about this dentist thing, because this is really the thumb on the scale for the reality TV. They do some world-class editing whenever they go into like, he's like, oh, I gotta get a root canal and all this sort of stuff. And then they're just like, let's get sound clips of every drill that's running in Orange County Chopper.
And they cut back and forth between the grinding on the motorcycles and the drilling. Yes. It's beautiful.
And then Paul Senior just like terrified of going to the dentist.
And then an audio drama of him and the dentist talking, definitely not during the procedure, afterwards being like, why you got this tube in my mouth?
The dentist at one point says, I've never really seen a 4-rooted upper tooth. And Paul Senior says, is that bad? He's like, what? What is this? It's so good.
It's so calming because it's so mundane, and again would never make it. I don't know. I guess I don't watch a lot of reality TV. And surely the Kardashians are doing this kind of thing too, right? Where it's like,
when you don't have anything else, like people's lives a lot of time, like, because this is just about like, it's life drama, right? It's a work drama, but it's also life drama. A lot of times people's lives are just incredibly boring.
Yeah.
So it's like, as much as we can gin up anything, it's like, oh, Paul Senior's got to go to the dentist. he seems a little nervous about that. Let's make, 10 minutes of the episode just about dental anxiety, which I can relate to. I get it, but it is very like thumb on the scale. We're just gonna like, let's just make it a reality show for a little bit. Let's do some editing. Let's do some really playing into the drama, which exists throughout. I would say this and almost all reality television. Like producers really are the people who are driving engines of this show, and the editors, but a lot of it being driven by producers who are like, yeah, say this or put yourself into this situation and we can make a scene out of it. We have to have something to fill the time.
And oh boy, it is, like we said, 2 episodes per bike, so it's a lot of time.
It doesn't need to be 2 episodes.
No.
Like, I get that it's like the pilot or whatever, but why in the name of God is the spider bike
all bikes
2
are
episodes?
2 episodes.
I know, but like from the beginning, why were they like, we need to do this, but let's stretch it? Like, there's so much extraneous garbage that I have to believe at some point dramatically affected father and son's relationship, where they're like, hey, let's make these two argue about something.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's manufacture drama between them that really elicits actual human emotion and hatred between the two of them over time. You know what I mean?
That's the beauty of the entertainment we like.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, let's brighten the mood with a little bit of Paul Sr.'s favorite person, Mikey.
Oh man, let me get some of the glowing quotes that he had to say. My son Mike is unique. He lights up the room. Everybody loves him. He just makes me laugh, you know? How can you be serious with him?
He's just talks about Mikey as if he's talking about someone he just fell in love with. Just a huge smile on his face every time he's around him, and never kind to Paul Jr. ever.
And let's get into some wild speculation here. Because why not? Because Mikey is his youngest son, so that's established that Mikey is the youngest. It's also established later in the episode that Paul Sr. had a drug and alcohol problem and was an absentee parent for what I imagine was more than just a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which has to have drastically painted the relationship that he has with his sons, who all know him as a sort of a different version of Paul Sr., right? Like, I don't know what that is, but you can imagine that it's different for Paul Jr., who has a different relationship with his father, who probably had more knowledge about what was happening with his dad as he was, dealing with drugs and alcohol than Mikey. So Mikey, it's funny that he sees Mikey as like, he's just this constant source of light and good and can do no wrong. But Paul Jr. is the biggest pain in my ass. Like, I think there has to be something to that. It's just the way he sees them so dramatically differently, it is like, it's striking to me how much of a difference he, just in the way that he speaks about both of them.
Oh yeah, it's wild. And I'm sure you're right. I'm sure part of it is like, oh man, this junior kid has seen me at my worst more. So like, I gotta blame some stuff on him so I don't feel as bad about doing whatever
he carries my name and is the heir to my throne.
But I think maybe even more what it is that Mikey has zero alpha energy whatsoever, and Paul Sr. doesn't have to fear that his son is going to
he's definitely not afraid
at any point,
he's definitely not afraid that Mikey's going to take him to court for a portion of the business in the future. You know what I mean? Like that is something he doesn't have to worry about. And I'm a Mikey at heart. I think when it comes down to it, at least in terms of this world, I'm like, I'm as an iron worker, a complete deadbeat. It's like, if that's not your thing, then like being in this world it's a strange personality to put in there, but it is a good lighthearted personality put in a situation that has been up to his entrance just fraught with strife. You know.
Well, the true magic of Mikey, because I read a biography that says he's an artist and a comedian. I couldn't find any of his comedy online. I tried. I would have loved to see a stand-up set, but it's not. I don't feel like it's the I'm going to tell jokes kind of comedy. Basically, the charm that he has is that he has zero anxiety, and not because he has any sort of backup plan. When he says I was a deadbeat as an iron worker, it's like, no, man, you're just a deadbeat. And I can tell that you, like, say you just got fired from your job and you have nothing in the bank, you would still 80% be this person who like doesn't do anything.
It would be okay too, because someone would be like, let's take Mikey in, like, let's take care of him, like, let's have that dude around because he's a fun hang, you know. I don't know, he's just it's an
unremarkable fun hang.
Yeah, just a unremarkable fun hang. I've known a few in my life, but I don't know, he just brings. It's funny how much he changes the tone of the show once he comes in, because he doesn't come in until the second. It's the second episode, I think.
Yeah.
So he's not in the first one at all. He comes in the second episode, and then immediately it's just like, Mikey's the best. Here comes Mikey. They do a whole thing about like they play into like Mikey's coming in late, right? Like, hold on.
Senior doesn't care when Mikey's late.
Yeah, so Mikey. He says, I wake up at 8 and I'm listening to Marvin Gaye on the alarm. Next thing you know, it's 8:30 and I'm late. It's like they're like, because it's a big deal for Senior, right? When he comes in late, he gets a mild admonishment, you know. And Paul Jr.'s like, he's the youngest boy, so he gets away with murder. But it's like, what are the stakes of Mikey being late to sweeping up the shop? Nothing, you know.
He's not like, actually there to do anything but be around for the producers to have something.
Yes, no, it's on. Like the producers had to have been like, can we get the kind of interesting guy in on the show too? Like, can we inject him into the show, because we just need more footage. Like, we have to edit together something. Like, you're building this bike and it's going, I don't know, well, you know, like there's no stakes in the bike other than like, we got to get to the Javits Center.
And there's even no contrast.
It's so just one note of the two of them just being like, brr, brr, brr. You're like, okay, yeah, we get it. But even then, the stakes of the bike aren't there, because there's nothing that's really going wrong with the build. Like at one point they're like, yeah, we got a couple weeks to get this back from the chromer. You're like,
the greatest plot point, BC, is when they put the seat on the bike and they're like, oh, dang it, the seat looks really bad. And then they have a brilliant idea that there's so many cuts to stretch out this, like, and then I had the idea to just put a little armor all on it. And they cut back to put the armor on.
It's the dumbest fucking...
And them all standing around.
I don't know
like,
why it's...
Yeah, that looks better. It's not even product placement. Maybe it was. Is that possible? It
can have been at that point. Placement? Like, they didn't... No one knew who they were at that point. But, like, at that point, like, up to that point, like this, because, you know, there's different beats of what this is. It becomes about the seat. They get the seat in. Everything's basically built, right? Like the bike is done. They get the seat in and they're mildly disappointed that it's not more two-tone. Like it's a black seat and it's got red webbing going through it. And they're just like, I don't know, kind of sucks. And they spend a good few minutes just bemoaning the seat until it's literally wiped down with Armor All. And they're like, we did it.
Yeah. Now it's
guys, high fives all around. We did it. We fixed it. We fixed the seat. You're like, I don't think the seat. Who gives a shit about the fucking seat? Like, it was fine. There was no problem with the seat.
Armor All, whatever.
I don't
think the Armor All fixed it.
I don't think the Armor All did anything. But I also did, like, at a certain point, like, how many more spider webs do we need on this goddamn bike? You know what I mean? Like, we get it. We get the idea. You know, spider webs, it's cool. I used to throw bugs and sticks into him as a kid. It was really enlightening. But yeah, I don't know. It's the manufactured drama, like the Armor All seat thing, like the dentist, are the things that I push back against really heavily now. But I'm also like,
I
you gotta
love
do a
it now.
job. You know, I'm like, you gotta do a job. You gotta
What's the
make
most
an episode.
interesting to me? It's like, how are you going to? What is their next plan to try to make this interesting at all? And anything that isn't just like have an argument, I think is gonna make me happy.
Well, the other manufactured moment is
I think I have pictures of it.
The cell phone thing. Do you remember this? Where he's like, it's when Paul comes in late, and then Senior's like, if your phone doesn't ring, I'm gonna take it away from you. Like I'm gonna turn it off. So like clearly Paul Jr. is on his father has control over his cell phone somehow.
Yeah.
And then he storms out.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna take
he storms out
and
he drives away. And then he drives back and he's like, I decided to walk around and enter the back of the building.
Let him cool
to
off
make a nice
bit.
Let him cool off. Paul Sr. walks out the front door and is like, Paul Jr.'s truck is here. What's he doing here? He turns around and sees him, and then they don't say anything at all to each other. They're just like, okay, all right. And you can tell that it was some producer's harebrained idea to be like, okay, now you'll sneak in the back, and then you're going to go out the front, and you're going to see his truck, and then you're going to come back in, and then you can confront him. And then he comes, but the way it plays out is just like, I don't know, we're kind of over it, you know? I already yelled at him. You know?
Yeah, like, I mean, it feels like it makes the preceding drama feel more real because it does feel like there's enough tension left that Paul Sr. doesn't really want to play the bit.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's clearly a bit. He's like, I gotta go outside and see whoa, his truck is here, but Paulie hasn't come in.
He didn't come in this door. He turns around and he's just standing there looking at the bike, and then they cut to like Senior, and it's just like all a bunch of dudes just standing around. And they're like, I think I had made my point earlier when I said something to him. And you're like, okay.
It's really
cool.
It's really bad. It's really boring. I wonder how much of that stuff, if any of it, is on the cutting room floor, because I would love to see the even worse manufactured.
God, I would love to see the cut stuff of just things that didn't work, you know? Like suggestions that didn't work of like,
I think it's mostly in the show. BC.
I think almost all of it. Yeah, almost all of it's in the show. Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm gonna hit this slide, BC. I have an example of one of Paul Sr.'s two mistakes.
What a buffoon!
Why is this handlebar swinging back and forth so loose? Did you put a stop in there? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I don't think you did. No, I'm certain I did. I definitely put a stop in there. But it's funny because if this stuff is manufactured both times that Paul Sr. does anything and they're both fuck ups, it really does seem like he fucked it up. Like it does not seem fake.
No, both. Because it's this, and there's another thing about the way he like slides something on that causes causes a scratch on some of the chrome. It's like I did not do that. He's like,
there. He's screaming in a way that makes it so clear. Like in both of these cases, it's so clear that he fucked up and knows he did.
No, it's just gonna 100% plays like he definitely did it. There's no way around it. Paul Jr. knows that he did it
from the beginning. Knows that he did
it. It's the two things that they go into the way of being like, yeah, I went ahead and did the handlebars, and then I did the other thing. There's like, there are times when I'm like, what really is he doing? Like he runs the business. I get it. But in terms of like the hands-on, I'm like, was he ever like the motorcycle guy, you know?
Well, he was an iron worker. I was surprised that, you know, he actually came from an iron worker background when I looked into it. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if we see much of him doing anything. It seems like when he does do stuff, he does it specifically when the producers aren't around. Because again, I wouldn't believe that this was real, except that Paul Senior is not that good of an actor in the bits where you can tell he's been forced into something, and it really just reeks of, I did this wrong, and I have to make this so difficult for anyone to challenge me.
Yeah.
You know, like
one of my favorite bits is when they make him ride the motorcycle in like sub-zero weather,
and
it's just
the
like
crotchless chaps.
Yeah, the crotchless chaps, and it's just like, because they have to get footage of this motorcycle on the road, otherwise they just have it spinning on that pedestal, and they're like, yeah, this is what it looks like. They're like, you could tell the producers like, we really need footage of someone riding this thing, and you can tell no one wanted to ride the motorcycle when it's freezing outside and had previously had like 3 feet of snow. They're just like,
and it might break.
He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I guess I'll go ride this thing in freezing weather while the roads had previously just been iced over before we got to go to the Javits Center. So I'll try not to destroy the bike.
You think they actually
had to have done it after?
Before they had to do, they had to do it.
Right? They would have had to have done it after.
Although, if you're a producer and you can convince them to fuck the bike up right before the Javits Center, that would be
It's interesting too, because it does feel like a moment where there was. It does feel like there was a moment where they're like, we really need you to do this. And they're like, look, we got to take this thing to a show. We don't want to ride this bike before we don't want anything to happen to this, right? Like, it can get hit by a rock. Like, anything can happen on the open road. They're like, yeah, but we really need to see it in action. We're going to get a lot of good shots of it. So, I don't know. He comes back and is just like, all right, well, I hope you're happy. Like, that's his attitude when he comes back after the bike race. Like, well, I did it. I hope you're all happy about that.
Engine feels strong.
Yeah.
What he means is it's a miserable thing to ride, and that's the only thing I've read about Orange County choppers is that they're miserable to ride and don't last long.
Wonderful. Just what you want out of a vehicle, really.
Yeah, for sure. And then I have one more thing, BC, which is, of course, they visit Paul Sr.'s mother, who they say is 87 years old.
They've
got to sweep snow. They got to de-snow the driveway. You got to shovel the driveway, get her car out. And
where's she going? Where's she going?
I think also maybe it's her friend's car, she says.
Well, she adds that on to the agenda. Okay. Is that like, because it's funny because I don't think they had planned on shoveling her friend's car out of the snow. They definitely came to shovel her car out of the snow, which, fine, whatever. But you do see her like, oh, can you also do the white Buick over there? And it's like, they're not going to say no. One, she's the sweetest little lady. And they do it. They make, they're like, oh, you're going to need to pay us more than $10. I'll give you 20. I'll give you 20. And it's really cute and funny and sweet. But I feel like that moment was like, oh, hey, while you're here, can you actually do that? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, because we're, I'm your son and your grandson's here and we're strapping, capable men. We can, get all the snow off the car. It was probably my favorite moment. It's a cute little, sweet little family moment, whether it's manufactured or not. There was something kind of sweet about it.
Yeah, she seems like a nice lady. Where it's like, oh well, I don't know. I was gonna try to glean something from that maybe isn't true, so I won't. But I also got to mention they throw some snow shovels back and forth at each other. That's great. They get into a snowball fight, of course, and throw the shovel at each other.
It's great stuff. This is great stuff. It's beautiful stuff.
Very good. So shout out to Paul Senior.
If you want to hit the next slide, I did include the Javits Center.
Oh.
Because the Javits Center mentions ramp up to like 1 million in the latter part of the second episode, where she's like, the Javits Center, the Javits Center, the Javits Center. And you're like, all right, we get it. We're going to the Javits Center. It's very exciting.
We never get an external shot of it, I guess.
We don't. No, we're always
this.
Yeah, no, it's in the seedy underbelly of the Javits Center. Like it looks like they're in the basement of like a, I don't know, convention center basically. Like it doesn't even look like they're on a convention center floor. It looks like they're subterranean in a convention center. And you're just
we
like,
thought it was
this
the
seems like a
parking area
yeah.
first.
You're like, this is a horrible venue for, I don't know, like there's a lot of floor space, which I guess is what you need if you're going to show off a bunch of motorcycles. But yeah, really an odd venue. But it's all about getting that bike to New York, baby. We got to get it to the city.
And it does seem like a huge pain. The most amount of work they do is loading in and out of the Javits Center. That doesn't seem fun at all.
No, it seems truly horrible.
Paul Jr. gets to meet one of his idols from growing up, his bike design idols. Dude looks like a creep. I am judging him on his appearance. But, but I'm sorry to do that, but like, I get bad vibes from that dude.
Look, I'm sure there are segments of the motorcycle community who are wonderful, upstanding citizens.
Yeah.
I also know there are some really, really, truly garbage individuals who make their lives entirely about motorcycles and subjecting, women and like just there's this whole like when I was in the parking lot for the Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue stuff where I was working, I was across from a vendor that was like leather jackets and t-shirts, and the shit that was on that, I'm just like the humanity that is interested in what this person is selling is, if you boil down everything that I despise about certain human characteristics, it's this clientele right here, the people who are shopping for these vests with these slogans and these t-shirts with these stupid fucking sayings and misogynistic shit all over them. And I'm just like, and I was just in it and observing, and I'm like, these people are just out of their minds, the worst. So I've seen it up close, the very worst segments of it. I know there are good portions of it, but I have seen some of the seedy underbelly. Like I haven't seen like meth runners. I mean, I have, but like I haven't been like in one of their dens, or whatever, in like a bar or something where they're at. That seems way worse. But there are portions of the motorcycle community that it's just like, oh, that's terrifying. Those are horrifying individuals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I grew up around some people who were bikers that went to a bunch of rallies, and they for a long time got my hair cut at a place that was motorcycle themed because the people were motorcycle culture was their identity, like
right. Yes.
And they were some of the nicest people I ever met. I know that it's broad enough to have highlights, but the open. It is also a space where a lot of stuff is able to be out in the open that I find despicable.
No, it's truly horrific. And it just like it's so proudly out in the open that just like hatred and anger and like stupidity and ignorance, and you're just like, they literally wear it and have flags of the stupidity, and you're just like, that is one way to approach it. Just say, I am this dumb. I am this ignorant.
900 of my loud friends, so that you better not object to this public display.
Yeah, no, it's like, I better not say anything or I'll get killed. You know what I mean? It's like, I get it. I'll stay away. I won't say anything. I will just silently judge you from the food truck that I'm working in.
Yeah, and well, to be clear, this guy Paul Jr.'s idol. I am judging him based on his haircut and outfit more than any slogan or any representation of his work or whatever. I was just his vibe was bad.
Yeah,
but maybe he's a great dude.
Hey, he might be the coolest, chillest hang of all time, but I doubt it.
And their bike goes over well at the Javits Center. Oh, we didn't talk about the photographer, where that really feels like something is manufactured. that's kind of a hard place to know if it's manufactured, that Paul Sr. gets so angry about how they're putting the bike onto the photography stage that they're going to break the bike. I couldn't really tell if that was completely manufactured or if he really was angry, because it
I
seemed
don't
like the
know.
photographer was uncomfortable.
I mean, the photographer is a professional motorcycle photographer. You feel like if I was him and someone came in my studio and told me how to do my job, I'd be like, I got it. Please shut up, big armed man. Like, you walrus mustache man, I appreciate your concern, but you can exit the studio while I do my job. I don't know, like,
I mean, I was kind of on Senior's side if it was real though, because he did have three galoots from the shop kind of wheeling the bike up onto a little platform. It's like, yeah, they could drop that bike and that'd be it.
Well, the idiots could have dropped it at multiple times when they were in the shop too. It's just like, at
they could
what
have
point is it
scratched
just
the
like,
handlebars like
yeah,
Senior did.
it's just weird because he seems like Paul Senior seems like he can be such a micromanager about things,
But not things
but
that
it's
actually
that
matter. It's just
but things
an
that but
expression of power.
it's all about an expression of power. It's all about like, I'm the boss and I need to say something. It's like, yeah, or you could just shut up and not, like it's the micromanaging is a problem. And it's funny because, as we pointed out earlier, whenever he does take on the projects himself, he messes them up. So it's like he's not even a trustworthy manager. So when he micromanages someone, you're just kind of like, you can't even put on handlebars right. Like, why would I listen to you about what I should be doing right now? Which I think maybe is what some of the tension that we're going to see play out throughout the future might be about. I'm excited in a lot of ways to see how the tension really ratchets up, because it is going to get, spoiler, really ugly for the Tuttle family. Right now, it's all, hey, we got a TV show and we'll do whatever the producer says, to the point of like, yeah, they're going to be in court and suing each other. So I don't know. It will be intriguing to see more and more of those sort of like managerial and creative decisions and all those different traits and how they come into conflict with one another.
Ah, what a story, what a life.
Oof. Oh.
I'm looking at their sunglasses now, BC. These are not nearly narrow enough.
They got to be narrower and really tight.
Yeah, I got to work on that.
Yeah.
But man, what an adventure into episode 1 and 2 of American
The Black Widow bike.
Tell you what I'm mostly looking forward to is more of Vinny. Need more Vinny in
just it's funny because they paint Vinny immediately as like, he's the guy who holds Paul Jr. together.
Yeah.
He's the silent guy who does just as much work as the most important person on the show, but wants absolutely nothing to do with all of this spotlight and the drama.
Yeah.
And he turns into a real hero of mine.
Yep, I love him, and there's another guy that are we're people who are here to work and do our jobs. Yeah. Actually,
we're the do our jobs guy. That's what we do. While they're yelling at each other, we're building the motorcycles that the show is about, presumably.
What season do we start getting like celebrity guest appearances and that kind of thing? I'm guessing not until season 3 or something.
Yeah, I think it doesn't kick in until a little bit later. And it's funny the way the bikes ramp up too, because it becomes so corporate. Like the DeWalt bike, the whatever, whoever sponsored this motorcycle and wants us to bring it to their trade show bike. Like, it does become about like, how am I going to design a bike around a set of tools?
I mean,
okay.
It's kind of the perfect exercise for this because they're not really good for riding.
No.
Making dumb looking bikes is the name of the thing.
Yeah, no, it works for them and they ride it for a long time. There's a lot of American Chopper.
12 seasons, baby. At least that's what it says on Max. It's 12 seasons. Not sure what all iterations of the show that covers, but
I don't know. Junior versus senior, the Tuttle family feud, the courtroom drama year. Well, I guess we'll find out. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out here in the cargo bay. American Talkers, Talkin Chop. I'm just gonna drop this in the regular feed along with our Star Wars trading card show. We'll do another one of these in another month, another 2 months.
Yeah, and then eventually we'll do another hobby talk.
Yeah. If you don't like this, I don't know how you made it this far, but just skip these videos when they pop up in your feed, you know? All right.
If you're still here, like and subscribe, drop a comment about what your favorite parts of American Chopper are and what you think about the Tuttle's personalities.
Yeah.
We'd love to read your comments.
I was, never mind. Sometimes it's good to not say things. All right. Well, until next time, everybody, I guess that's bye forever.